The crimson alert lights bathed the Academy's command center in an ominous glow as Cadet Marcus Chun sat perfectly still at his simulation console. Around him, 17 other cadets from various species fumbled with their controls, their faces masks of confusion and growing panic. The Galactic Defense Academy's final examination had taken an unexpected turn, and none of them were prepared for what they were experiencing. Marcus kept his breathing steady, his dark eyes scanning the tactical display before him. The simulation showed a massive void crawler fleet bearing down on the Terran home system, their bioships pulsing with malevolent energy. Earth's orbital defenses were already overwhelmed, and the combined fleet of the Galactic Union was scattered across 3 sectors, too far to respond in time. "This can't be right," whispered HFY, a blue-scaled Aquarian whose gill slits fluttered with anxiety. "The parameters are impossible. No cadet could handle this scenario." Instructor Veltar, a towering Zenthari with silver skin and 3 eyes, stood frozen at the observation deck. His usual composed demeanor had cracked, revealing something Marcus had never seen before in their stoic instructor: genuine fear. The other instructors were clustered together, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "The simulation matrix has been compromised," Veltar finally announced, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We're experiencing a cascade failure in the training algorithms. All cadets are to power down their stations immediately." But Marcus didn't move. Something felt wrong about this entire situation. The Academy's systems were the most advanced in the galaxy, protected by quantum encryption and bioneural firewalls. A simple cascade failure couldn't produce scenarios this realistic, this detailed. The tactical readouts showed ship configurations he'd never seen in any training manual, energy signatures that followed patterns too sophisticated for standard simulation programming. "Cadet Chun, power down your console," Instructor Veltar commanded, but his voice lacked its usual authority. Marcus finally looked up, meeting the instructor's gaze. "Sir, with respect, I don't think this is a malfunction." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several cadets turned to stare at him, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. Marcus had always been the quiet one, the human who kept to himself and rarely spoke unless directly addressed. His academic performance was exemplary, but he'd never shown the kind of bold leadership that the Academy prized. "Explain yourself, Cadet," Veltar said, descending from the observation deck with measured steps. Marcus stood, his movements precise and controlled. At 22, he was older than most cadets, having enlisted after completing his doctoral thesis in theoretical physics at MIT. His slight frame and unassuming appearance often led others to underestimate him, but his mind was razor-sharp, and his instincts were becoming increasingly clear about their current situation. "The quantum resonance patterns in these bioships," Marcus began, gesturing to his display. "They're too complex for our simulation computers to generate. The energy matrices are following principles that our scientists are only beginning to understand. This level of detail would require processing power equivalent to a Class XI artificial intelligence, and the Academy doesn't have that capability." Instructor Veltar's 3 eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting this is real?" "I'm suggesting we consider the possibility," Marcus replied calmly. "The void crawlers have been probing our outer territories for months. Intelligence reports indicated they were testing our response times, mapping our defensive networks. What if this isn't a test of us? What if this is them testing our entire system?" The chamber fell silent except for the hum of computer systems and the soft breathing of 18 different species. Marcus could feel the weight of their stares, but he continued analyzing the tactical display. The Void Crawler fleet was moving in a formation he recognized from his studies of ancient Earth military history, a double envelopment designed to surround and isolate enemy forces while cutting off escape routes. "Even if you're correct," said Instructor Thane, a stocky dwarven engineer with cybernetic implants covering half his face, "we're cadets. We have no authority to what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice still calm, but carrying a new edge. "To defend our homes? To protect the innocent? The Academy taught us that command is about making decisions when no one else can or will. Right now, our instructors are paralyzed by the impossibility of our situation. Someone needs to act." He turned back to his console and began inputting commands. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency across the holographic interface, pulling up real-time sensor data from across the Sol system. The readings confirmed his worst fears. This was no simulation. The Earth defense grid shows actual power fluctuations, he announced. Luna Base is reporting genuine casualties. The orbital shipyards at L5 are going dark one by one. He paused, letting the implications sink in. We're not in a simulation anymore. We're in the Academy's emergency command center, and we've been patched into the real defense network. Cadet Zara TH, an insectoid hive queen larva whose compound eyes reflected the alert lights, clicked her mandibles nervously. But how is that possible? Academy protocols strictly forbid. Protocols mean nothing when the enemy is already inside your systems, Marcus said, pulling up a new display. Look at the infiltration patterns. The void crawlers didn't just hack our simulation. They've been systematically penetrating our entire command network, gathering intelligence on our capabilities, our response times, our decision-making processes. They turned our greatest training facility into a spy network. The realization hit the room like a physical blow. For decades, the Galactic Defense Academy had been training the finest military minds from across the Union. Every tactical doctrine, every strategic innovation, every classified defense protocol had been practiced and refined within these walls. If the void crawlers had access to all of that data, they know everything, whispered Instructor Veltar, his silver skin paling to an almost white sheen. Marcus nodded grimly. They know our standard responses, our contingency plans, our fallback positions. They've gamed out every scenario we might throw at them. He straightened his shoulders and looked around the room, which means we need to do something they haven't seen before. Something completely outside standard doctrine. You're talking about improvising against an enemy that has studied our methods for years, said Cadet Torgak, a massive Orcish warrior whose tusks gleamed in the red light. That's suicide. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but it's the only chance we have. Look at the tactical situation. Earth's defenses are designed around the assumption that we'll have advance warning, that our fleets will be in position to respond. The void crawlers have eliminated those advantages. They're using our own expectations against us. He began pulling up historical data, his mind racing through possibilities. Earth's military history was filled with examples of unconventional tactics succeeding against superior forces. The key was to think beyond the parameters that the enemy had studied, to embrace chaos and uncertainty as weapons. The void crawlers fight like a biological organism, Marcus continued, his confidence growing as the pieces fell into place. They're efficient, coordinated, predictable in their efficiency. But biological organisms have weaknesses. They can be confused, overwhelmed, forced to adapt faster than their systems can handle. Instructor Veltar stepped closer to Marcus's console, his three eyes studying the displays with new interest. What are you proposing? Asymmetric warfare, Marcus said simply. We stop trying to fight them on their terms and start forcing them to fight on ours. Humans have always been good at that. It's how we survived on Earth when everything else was bigger, stronger, and faster than us. He began outlining a strategy that would have been considered heretical in any academy classroom. Instead of attempting to preserve the existing defensive network, he proposed deliberately overloading key systems to create electromagnetic pulse effects that would disrupt the void crawlers' bioneural networks. Rather than trying to outrun their faster ships, he suggested using the debris from destroyed orbital platforms as improvised weapons, turning the enemy's own momentum against them. This is insane, breathed Cadet Lisa, a tall, elegant elven navigator whose usually perfect composure was showing cracks. You're talking about destroying our own infrastructure. Infrastructure can be rebuilt, Marcus replied. People can't. The void crawlers are counting on us being too civilized, too concerned with preserving our achievements to fight dirty. They don't understand that humans will burn down everything they've built rather than let it fall into the wrong hands. The truth of his words resonated through the chamber. The human tendency towards scorched earth tactics was well documented in galactic history, often viewed with a mixture of admiration and horror by other species. It was a mindset that could seem insane to those who hadn't grown up on a world where survival often meant making unthinkable sacrifices. Even if your strategy could work, Instructor Thane said, we don't have the authority to implement it. We're cadets. The real commanders are either dead or cut off from the command network. Marcus interrupted. I've been monitoring communication channels. Admiral Morrison's flagship was one of the first targets hit. General Voss at Titan Command hasn't responded in over an hour. The Void Crawlers didn't just attack our defenses. They decapitated our command structure. The implications were staggering. In a matter of hours, the most sophisticated military apparatus in galactic history had been reduced to a handful of isolated units and a group of cadets in a training facility. But Marcus saw opportunity in the chaos. "That's actually an advantage," he said, surprising everyone. "The Void Crawlers planned this assault based on our predictable command hierarchy. They know how our admirals think, how our generals react. But they don't know us. We're nobodies, insignificant cadets who shouldn't even be in the equation." He turned to face the group, and something had changed in his demeanor. The quiet, studious cadet was gone, replaced by something harder and more focused. "We have access to the Academy's emergency command protocols. We have the most advanced tactical computers in the Union at our disposal. And we have something the enemy didn't account for: 18 minds from different species, each bringing unique perspectives to the problem." "You're seriously suggesting we take command?" asked Cadet HFY, her gill slits fluttering rapidly. "I'm suggesting we stop waiting for someone else to save us," Marcus replied. "The Academy's emergency protocols are clear. In the absence of senior command authority, the highest-ranking available officers assume responsibility. Right now, that's us." Instructor Veltar was silent for a long moment, his three eyes studying Marcus with an intensity that seemed to peer into his soul. Finally, he spoke. "Cadet Shun, you're proposing to violate numerous regulations, potentially commit treason against the Union command structure, and risk the lives of every person in the Sol system based on an untested theory." Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, sir, I am. And you believe this is the right course of action?" "I believe it's the only course of action that has a chance of success." Another long pause. Then Veltar nodded slowly. "Emergency Protocol 7 is now in effect. Command authority is transferred to the Senior Cadet Corps." He looked around the room. "Cadet Shun, you have tactical command. The rest of you are his staff officers. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all." The weight of command settled on Marcus's shoulders like a physical burden. Around him, 17 of the galaxy's finest young minds waited for his orders, their lives, and the lives of billions now dependent on his decisions. Outside, the Void Crawler fleet continued its inexorable advance toward Earth, confident in their superiority and prepared for any conventional response. They weren't prepared for what Marcus Chun was about to unleash on them. "First things first," Marcus said, his voice carrying new authority. "We need to establish secure communication with any surviving units. Zara TH, you're our communications officer. Use your hive mind networking protocols to create a distributed communication web that can't be easily targeted." The insectoid cadet's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement as she began implementing the unconventional communication strategy. "Torgak, you're in charge of coordinating our remaining defensive assets. Throw out the standard tactical manual. I want you to think like a raider, not a soldier. KFVA, you're our intelligence officer. Start analyzing the Void Crawler attack patterns for weaknesses they don't know they have." Orders flowed from him with surprising natural authority, each assignment tailored to the unique capabilities of different species. Within minutes, the Academy's command center had transformed from a panicked group of students into something resembling a functional command staff. But Marcus knew that organization alone wouldn't be enough. The real test would come when they faced the enemy directly, when his untested theories were put against the reality of alien bioweapons and overwhelming force. He stared at the tactical display showing the approaching fleet and felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. This was just the beginning. The Academy's command center buzzed with activity as Marcus's improvised staff worked to implement his unconventional strategy. 2 hours had passed since they'd assumed emergency command, and the Void Crawler fleet had advanced significantly closer to Earth's inner defensive sphere. Traditional military doctrine would have them falling back to prepared positions, consolidating their forces for a last stand. Marcus was doing the opposite. "Report from the outer marker stations," announced Cadet KFVA, her blue-scaled fingers dancing across the intelligence console. "The Void Crawlers have deployed biomines throughout the asteroid belt. They're using them to create a sensor web. Anything that tries to pass through gets detected and tracked." Marcus studied the holographic display floating before him. The enemy's strategy was elegant in its simplicity. They'd effectively turned the entire outer solar system into a surveillance network, making it impossible for any relief force to approach undetected. It was a textbook example of space denial, exactly the kind of tactic that would be taught in advanced strategic studies. "That's their first mistake," he said, causing several cadets to look up in surprise. "How is total sensor coverage a mistake?" asked Cadet Torgak. The massive orc had shed his usual academy uniform for makeshift battle gear, cobbled together from emergency supplies. His tusks gleamed as he spoke, lending his words a predatory edge. Marcus highlighted a section of the display, zooming in on the biomine network. "Because they're thinking like conquerors, not defenders. Look at the deployment pattern. They've optimized it for detecting incoming ships, not for tracking local debris and natural phenomena. They're so focused on what might come from outside the system that they're blind to what's already here." He pulled up a new overlay showing the current positions of mining ships, cargo haulers, and industrial platforms throughout the solar system. Most had gone dark when the attack began, but their last known positions painted an interesting picture. "The Henderson Mining Consortium has been operating in the asteroid belt for 30 years, Marcus continued. "They've got autonomous mining platforms scattered throughout the region, most of them powered down and abandoned when the alert went out. But they're still there, and their stealth coating makes them nearly invisible to passive sensors." Cadet Lisa leaned forward from her position at the navigation console. "You want to turn mining equipment into weapons?" "I want to turn mining equipment into the galaxy's most expensive fireworks display," Marcus corrected. "Each platform has a fusion reactor capable of powering a small city. If we can overload those reactors in a coordinated sequence." The implications hit the room like a thunderbolt. Fusion reactors didn't just explode. They created miniature stars, releasing energy equivalent to multiple nuclear weapons. A coordinated chain reaction throughout the asteroid belt would produce an electromagnetic pulse large enough to disrupt bioneural networks across half the solar system. "That's absolutely insane," breathed Instructor Thane. The dwarven engineer had been watching Marcus's plans unfold with growing amazement and horror. The radiation alone would sterilize everything within a 50 million kilometer radius. "Not if we time it correctly," Marcus replied. He was already running calculations, his fingers flying across the tactical computer interface. The Void Crawler's bioships rely on quantum-entangled neural networks for coordination. Disrupt those networks at the right moment, and their fleet becomes a collection of individual ships with no ability to coordinate their response. Cadet Zara TH's compound eyes reflected the data streams flowing across her communication console. The timing would have to be perfect. We're talking about nanosecond precision across astronomical distances, which is why we're not going to try to control it, Marcus said, pulling up another display. "We're going to let chaos theory do the work for us. Instead of one massive coordinated explosion, we create a cascade failure that spreads naturally through their biomine network. They built their sensor web using quantum entanglement. We're going to use that same network to propagate our disruption signal." The strategy was audacious beyond belief. Rather than fighting the enemy's strengths, Marcus proposed to hijack their own systems and turn them into weapons of self-destruction. It was exactly the kind of thinking that had made humans so unpredictable in galactic warfare. The willingness to embrace controlled chaos as a tactical asset. "Even if we could implement this plan," said Cadet Velnari, a crystalline being whose faceted skin reflected the command center's lights like a living prism, "we have no way to reach the mining platforms. All our ships were destroyed or disabled in the initial attack." Marcus smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "We don't need ships. We need hackers." He gestured to Cadet Zara TH, whose insectoid features brightened with understanding. "The Academy's quantum communication array can reach anywhere in the solar system instantaneously. If we can access the mining platform's control systems remotely, we can turn them into the galaxy's most expensive suicide bombers." Zara TH finished, her mandibles clicking with what might have been approval or excitement. "The legal implications alone," Instructor Veltar began. "Won't matter if we're all dead." Marcus cut him off. "Sir, with respect, we're far beyond the point where regulations and legal precedents matter. The enemy has shown they're willing to use our own systems against us. It's time we return the favor." For the next hour, the command center became a hive of controlled activity. Zara TH worked to establish connection with the abandoned mining platforms, using her species' natural affinity for distributed network systems. Torgat coordinated with the few remaining defensive platforms, preparing them for the chaos that would follow the electromagnetic pulse. HFY analyzed void crawler communication patterns, looking for the optimal moment to trigger their cascade failure. Marcus found himself moving between stations, offering guidance, and making split-second decisions that would have taken traditional command structures hours of debate. He felt the weight of responsibility settling deeper into his bones with each choice, but also a growing sense of clarity. This was what he'd been born for, even if he'd never recognized it before. Contact established with mining platform 77 Alpha, ZRTH reported. The automation systems are still functional, but the security protocols are extensive. Can you crack them? Marcus asked. The insectoid cadet's compound eyes glittered. Give enough time, yes. But the void crawlers will reach the inner system before I can break through all the necessary firewalls. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical display. The enemy fleet was making excellent time, their bioships slicing through space with organic efficiency. They would reach Earth's final defensive perimeter in less than 6 hours. After that, the planet itself would be under direct attack. What if we don't break through the firewalls? He said suddenly. What if we go around them instead? Explain, said Instructor Thane, moving closer to the conversation. Marcus pulled up the mining platform schematics. These systems were designed to be operated by human crews in isolated conditions. Every platform has an emergency override system, hardwired connections that bypass all digital security in case of catastrophic system failure. But those overrides require physical presence, Veltar pointed out. Someone has to actually be on the platform to activate them. Not necessarily, Marcus replied, highlighting a section of the platform's hull. Look at the external maintenance ports. They're designed for automated repair drones, but they could also be accessed by emergency pods. Lisa breathed. You want to send people to these platforms in escape pods. I want to send one person, Marcus corrected. Someone small enough to fit in a modified pod, smart enough to handle the technical aspects, and crazy enough to volunteer for a suicide mission. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Whoever volunteered would be traveling alone through space filled with hostile bioships, landing on an isolated platform with no backup or support, and manually triggering a fusion reactor overload that would likely vaporize them along with everything else in the immediate area. I'll go, said Cadet Mikhail Petrov, speaking for the first time since the crisis began. The young Russian was small even by human standards, but his scores in zero-G operations and engineering were among the highest in the academy. I've trained on Henderson platforms during my internship rotations. I know those systems better than anyone. Mikhail, you understand what you're volunteering for? Marcus asked quietly. The smaller cadet nodded. I understand. But if this works, my death might save billions of lives. That's acceptable math. The calm acceptance in his voice hit the room like a physical blow. Here was someone barely 20 years old, calmly accepting his own death as a tactical necessity. It was precisely the kind of mindset that made humans so unsettling to other species, the ability to make ultimate sacrifices without apparent emotional trauma. There might be another way, said Zartich suddenly. If we can establish a quantum communication link with the platform while Mikhail is there, I might be able to upload his consciousness to our systems before the reactor overloads. It's experimental technology, but it's a chance. Marcus finished. He looked at Mikhail. Your call, Cadet. Mikhail was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Let's do this thing. The next 2 hours were a blur of preparation and technical improvisation. Marcus watched as his improvised team worked miracles with inadequate resources and impossible timelines. An emergency pod was modified to include quantum communication equipment and enough shielding to hopefully survive the journey through the asteroid belt. ZRTH configured her consciousness transfer protocols, knowing that they had never been tested under these conditions. Void crawler scout ships detected at the belt's outer edge, reported HFY. They're moving faster than anticipated. Time to intercept, 4 hours, 18 minutes. Marcus felt the familiar calm that came with critical decision points. Launch window in 30 minutes. After that, we won't be able to get Mikhail through their patrol lines. The modified pod sat in the Academy's emergency launch bay like a technological prayer sent into the void. Mikhail, suited up and ready, turned to address the assembled group. If this doesn't work, he said with a slight smile, At least tell my mother I died doing something heroic instead of stupid. It's both, Marcus replied honestly. That's what makes it human. 27 minutes later, the pod launched into space, carrying one small cadet toward a rendezvous with destiny. Marcus watched the tracking display as Mikhail's signal moved through the solar system, dodging automated patrols and bioship sweeps with skill and more than a little luck. Signal acquisition, Zara-TH announced as the pod reached its target. Mikhail is on the platform and beginning override procedures. On the tactical display, the Void Crawler fleet continued its inexorable advance. They had detected the pod's launch, but dismissed it as a single escape attempt, exactly what Marcus had hoped they would think. The enemy's confidence was about to become their greatest weakness. Override complete, came Mikhail's voice over the communication link. Reactor containment field destabilizing on schedule. Zara-TH, you'd better work fast with that consciousness upload. Transfer beginning now, the insectoid cadet replied, her mandibles clicking rapidly as she worked. Marcus, once this cascade starts, we'll have maybe 15 minutes before the electromagnetic pulse reaches Earth. Are our people ready? Marcus looked around the command center at his unlikely team, cadets from across the galaxy who had somehow become the last hope for human civilization. They were ready. Whether he was ready was another question entirely, but it was too late for doubt now. Reactor overload in 3-2. The display showed a brilliant flash of light as mining platform 77 Alpha became a temporary star. The explosion propagated through the quantum-entangled biomine network exactly as Marcus had predicted, creating a cascade of destruction that would disrupt Void Crawler communications throughout the outer system. Consciousness transfer complete, Zara-TH announced. Mikhail's neural patterns are stored in our quantum matrix. Marcus allowed himself one moment of relief before focusing on the larger picture. The first phase of his plan had succeeded, but the real battle was just beginning. The Void Crawlers would adapt quickly to their communications disruption, and when they did, they would be angrier and more dangerous than ever. But they would also be confused, isolated, and fighting blind in a system that humans had spent centuries learning to navigate. For the first time since the crisis began, Marcus felt something that might have been hope. The electromagnetic pulse from the cascade explosion hit the Void Crawler fleet like an invisible tsunami. Marcus watched the tactical display as enemy bioships suddenly began moving erratically, their perfect formations dissolving into chaos as quantum-entangled communication networks failed across their entire force. Individual ships were still deadly, but they could no longer coordinate their attacks with the hive mind efficiency that made them so terrifying. Direct hit on their command coordination, reported HFY, her gill slits fluttering with excitement. Their fleet cohesion is down to less than 30% effectiveness. How long before they adapt? Marcus asked, knowing that the Void Crawler's biological technology was designed for rapid evolution under stress. Based on their previous encounters, I estimate 47 minutes before they establish new communication protocols, the Aquarian replied. 47 minutes. Not nearly enough time to mount a conventional counterattack, but Marcus wasn't thinking conventionally anymore. The successful cascade had proven something important. Human unpredictability could overcome alien technological superiority. Now he needed to push that advantage to its absolute limit. Phase 2, he announced to the command center. Torgak, status on the remaining defensive platforms. The massive orc consulted his displays. We have 17 orbital defense stations still operational, but their weapons systems are limited. The Void Crawlers took out our heavy missile platforms in the first wave. Forget the weapons, Marcus said. I want you to prep those platforms for ramming speed. The request sent a shock wave of disbelief through the command center. Orbital defense platforms were massive structures, each one representing decades of construction and billions of credits in advanced technology. They were meant to be defended, not used as improvised kinetic weapons. Sir, Instructor Veltar said carefully, those platforms house over 3,000 personnel each. Not anymore, Marcus replied, pulling up evacuation records. Emergency protocols had them evacuated when the attack began. They're running on automated systems now, expensive, sophisticated, and completely expendable. He highlighted the tactical situation on the main display. The Void Crawler fleet was spread across a wide area as individual ships struggled to re-establish contact with their command hierarchy. Their bioships were incredibly agile, but they were also organic, which meant they followed certain behavioral patterns. Look at their movement trajectories, Marcus continued. Even without coordination, they're still following instinctive defensive patterns. When threatened, they cluster together for mutual protection, exactly like a school of fish avoiding a predator. Cadet Lisa leaned forward from her navigation console. You want to spook them into clustering, then hit them with kinetic impactors. I want to turn their own survival instincts against them, Marcus confirmed. 17 orbital platforms, properly aimed, can create a debris field that will force their entire fleet into predictable evasion patterns. The plan was audacious even by the standards they'd already established. Orbital defense platforms weren't designed for mobility. They were essentially armored cities in space, built for endurance rather than maneuverability. Converting them to kinetic weapons would require precise timing and navigation skills that push the boundaries of possibility. The thrust-to-mass ratios are all wrong, protested Cadet Velnari, her crystalline features refracting the command center's lights into rainbow patterns. Those platforms can barely maintain orbital position, let alone achieve ramming velocity. That's why we're not going to use their engines, Marcus replied, bringing up a new schematic. We're going to use Earth's gravity well. Calculated orbital decay, time to intersect with enemy positions at maximum velocity. The mathematics were staggering in their complexity. Each platform would need to begin its death spiral at precisely the right moment, following a trajectory that would place it in the path of bioships that were themselves moving in response to the platform's approach. It was a three-dimensional chess game played at interplanetary scales, with a margin for error measured in fractions of seconds. This is completely insane, breathed Instructor Thane. You're talking about orbital mechanics calculations that would take a supercomputer hours to verify. Then, it's a good thing we have one, Marcus said, gesturing to the Academy's quantum processing array. And, more importantly, we have something the void crawlers don't expect: the willingness to sacrifice our own infrastructure for tactical advantage. The next hour was controlled chaos as Marcus's team worked to implement the impossible plan. ZAR-TH established quantum links with each orbital platform, uploading navigation programs that would guide their final descents. Torgat coordinated the timing sequences, ensuring that each platform would reach its target window with maximum kinetic energy. HFY monitored void crawler response patterns, updating trajectory calculations in real time as the enemy fleet continued to adapt to their communication disruption. Marcus found himself at the center of it all, making hundreds of micro-decisions that collectively determined whether Earth lived or died. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but he discovered something unexpected about himself. Under extreme pressure, his mind became even more focused and clear. The chaos around him felt manageable, reducible to mathematical certainties and logical progressions. First platform launch in 30 seconds, announced Lisa. Orbital Station Gamma 7 beginning controlled descent sequence. On the tactical display, the massive structure began to fall toward Earth, its trajectory carefully calculated to pass through a point in space where void crawler bioships would be in approximately 17 minutes. The platform's hull, designed to withstand asteroid impacts, had been reinforced with emergency structural supports. When it hit its target, the collision would release energy equivalent to multiple nuclear weapons. Void crawlers are responding, HFY reported. They're interpreting the platform's movement as an evacuation attempt and moving to intercept. Perfect, Marcus said. Launch platform Beta 4. The second orbital station began its death dive, aimed at a position that would force the intercepting bioships to choose between targets. More importantly, it would drive them into the path of platform Gamma 7, creating a cascade of collisions that would multiply the kinetic damage. Sir, said a voice from behind him. This is working. Marcus turned to see Cadet Mikhail Petrov, or rather, the consciousness transfer version of him that ZAR-TH had uploaded to the Academy's quantum matrix. The artificial representation looked exactly like the original, but there was something different in his expression, a quality of amazement that seemed appropriate for someone who had recently died and been reborn as living information. The biological neural networks, Mikhail continued, his voice carrying across the command center with digital clarity. I can see them from in here, the way they process information. The void crawlers aren't just using quantum entanglement for communication. They're using it for distributed consciousness. Each ship is like a neuron in a vast brain. The implications hit Marcus immediately, which means when we disrupted their communication network, we gave their entire species a massive stroke. Mikhail finished. They're not just having trouble coordinating. They're literally thinking slower, processing information at a fraction of their normal capacity. This changed everything. Marcus had been planning for an enemy that would adapt and overcome their tactics within hours. If the void crawlers were operating at diminished cognitive capacity, it opened up possibilities he hadn't dared consider. How long before they recover? He asked. Based on what I can observe from their network traffic, Mikhail replied, at least 6 hours. Maybe more if we can maintain pressure on their remaining communication nodes. 6 hours. Enough time to do more than just inconvenience the invasion fleet. Enough time to actually defeat it. Platform Gamma 7 impact in 40 seconds, announced Lisa. Marcus watched the tactical display as his improvised kinetic weapon closed with its target. The bioship it was aimed at had detected the threat and was attempting evasive maneuvers, but its responses were sluggish compared to normal void crawler reflexes. The platform's trajectory remained true. The collision, when it came, was spectacular. The orbital platform struck the bioship amidships, its massive bulk punching through organic armor like a bullet through tissue. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers, debris spreading in a rapidly expanding sphere that caught 2 additional bioships in its destructive embrace. Target destroyed, reported Torgak with grim satisfaction. Secondary kills confirmed on bioships 7-7 and 7-9. Platform Beta 4 impact in 90 seconds, Lisa continued. Enemy ships are attempting to clear the impact zone, but their movement patterns are still erratic. The second collision was even more effective than the first. The bioship attempted to dodge at the last moment, but its impaired reflexes caused it to move directly into the platform's path. The impact tore the alien vessel in half, creating a debris field that forced nearby ships to scatter in all directions. This is working, breathed Cadet Zaratich. Their fleet cohesion is down to 15% and falling. But Marcus was already thinking ahead to the next problem. The kinetic bombardment was effective, but it was also limited. They had 17 orbital platforms, enough to destroy perhaps 30 or 40 bioships. The void crawler fleet numbered in the hundreds. We need a force multiplier, he said, studying the larger tactical picture. Something that can extend our effectiveness beyond just ramming attacks. The debris fields, suggested Mikhail from his digital existence. Each platform impact creates thousands of pieces of high-velocity shrapnel. If we could somehow control their trajectories. Marcus felt a familiar spark of insight. Gravitational slingshots. We use Earth's gravity well to accelerate debris from each impact, sending it toward other targets in the fleet. The plan was becoming even more complex, requiring calculations that pushed the Academy's quantum computers to their limits. But the mathematics were beautiful in their elegance. Each collision would create a cascade of secondary impacts, turning the entire battlefield into a storm of deadly projectiles. Implementation requires precise timing, warned Velnari. The slightest miscalculation could send debris toward Earth's populated areas. Then, we don't miscalculate, Marcus replied simply. Zaratich, how's the quantum processing load? Manageable, the insectoid cadet replied. Mikhail's consciousness transfer freed up significant computational resources. He's actually helping with the trajectory calculations. Marcus nodded, feeling pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The void crawlers had expected to face human military doctrine, predictable tactics, conventional weapons, structured command hierarchies. Instead, they were confronting something entirely different. Human creativity unleashed by desperation, amplified by alien technology, and guided by minds that refused to accept the impossible. Platform Delta 2 launch in 60 seconds, announced Lisa. Platform Echo 5 launch in 90 seconds, added Torgak. The orbital bombardment continued, each impact sending shockwaves through the increasingly disorganized void crawler fleet. Bioships that had seemed invincible hours earlier were being systematically destroyed by converted infrastructure, their organic advantages negated by pure kinetic force and human ingenuity. But Marcus knew this was still just the beginning. The real test would come when the void crawlers finally adapted to their new circumstances, when their diminished cognitive capacity began to recover and they started fighting back with their full capabilities. When that happened, his improvised defense would face its ultimate trial. He looked around the command center at his unlikely team, cadets from across the galaxy who had somehow become Earth's last hope. They'd already achieved the impossible once today. Soon, they would need to do it again. The battle had been raging for 8 hours when the Void Crawlers finally adapted. Marcus watched the tactical display with growing unease as the scattered bioships began moving with renewed coordination. Their previously erratic patterns suddenly snapping into formations that suggested restored cognitive function. Neural network synchronization detected across 70% of their remaining fleet, reported HFY from her intelligence console. They're not back to full capacity, but they're functional enough to mount organized resistance. Marcus nodded grimly. His kinetic bombardment had reduced the enemy fleet by nearly 40%, but 200 bioships still remained, and they were no longer confused prey waiting to be hunted. The real battle was about to begin. "Sir," called Cadet Torgak, "they're launching something." Multiple small objects deploying from their remaining command ships. The tactical display updated to show dozens of tiny contacts separating from the Void Crawler fleet and accelerating toward Earth at incredible speed. They were too small to be ships, too fast to be conventional missiles, and moving in patterns that suggested intelligence rather than program guidance. Sporepods, brid instructor Veltor. They're launching biological infiltration units. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Spore pods were the Void Crawler's answer to heavily defended positions. Living weapons that could adapt to any environment, burrow through any defense, and transform whatever they touched into more Void Crawler biomass. If even one pod reached Earth's surface. "Time to impact?" he asked. 43 minutes at current velocity, replied Lisa. They're using gravitational assist from Luna to increase their approach speed. 43 minutes to prevent biological contamination of Earth. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, discarding conventional solutions as quickly as he considered them. The remaining orbital platforms were too far out of position to intercept the pods. Earth's surface defenses were designed for large targets rather than biological infiltrators, and there were simply too many pods to target individually. "We need an area denial weapon," he said finally. "Something that can create a barrier the pods can't cross." "Sir," said Cadet Mikhail's digital consciousness, "what if we don't try to stop them? What if we redirect them instead?" The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge to conventional thinking. Marcus turned to study the quantum display where Mikhail's consciousness resided, seeing something in the artificial representation's expression that suggested his death and rebirth had changed his perspective in unexpected ways. "Explain," Marcus said. "The spore pods are designed to seek out biological matter for conversion," Mikhail continued. "But they're not particularly intelligent. They follow chemical gradients and energy signatures. What if we gave them a more attractive target than Earth? What could be more attractive to biological infiltrators than a planet full of life?" asked Zaratish. Mikhail's artificial smile was unsettling in its implications. Another Void Crawler fleet. The idea hit the command center like a thunderbolt. The spore pods were programmed to convert any biological matter they encountered, but their targeting systems wouldn't necessarily distinguish between human biomass and Void Crawler biomass. If they could somehow redirect the pods toward the enemy fleet itself. "It's completely insane," said Instructor Thane. "Spore pods don't have the range to reach the main fleet, and even if they did, the Void Crawlers would simply destroy them. Not if they thought the pods were still on their original mission," Marcus replied, his mind already working through the deception. "Zarth, can you hack into the pod's guidance systems?" The insectoid cadet's compound eyes glittered with possibility. "Their biological neural networks are quantum encrypted, but if I can access their chemical gradient sensors." "Do it," Marcus ordered. "Make them think Earth has moved." What followed was perhaps the most audacious hacking attempt in galactic history. Zarth used her species' natural affinity for distributed computing to penetrate the spore pod's primitive guidance systems, uploading false sensor data that made the main Void Crawler fleet appear to be the source of the biological signatures they were seeking. Guidance systems compromised on 63% of the pod swarm, Zarth reported. "They're beginning to alter course toward Fleet Group Alpha." "What about the remaining 37%? Marcus asked. "Still locked onto Earth," came the reply. "Their systems are too hardened for remote access." Marcus studied the tactical display. 24 spore pods were still inbound for Earth, enough to begin biological conversion of the entire planet if they reached the surface. He needed another solution, something the void crawlers wouldn't anticipate. The solar collection array, he said suddenly. What's its current status? Cadet Velnari consulted her engineering displays. Orbital Solar Platform 1 is still operational, but it was powered down when the attack began. It would take hours to bring it back online. We don't need it online, Marcus replied. We just need its collection mirrors. The Orbital Solar Platform was a massive structure designed to collect stellar energy and beam it down to Earth's surface as microwave power transmission. Its collection array consisted of thousands of precisely aligned mirrors, each one capable of focusing sunlight with incredible intensity. You want to use focused solar energy as a point defense system, Lisa said with growing understanding. I want to turn the sun into a weapon, Marcus corrected. Those mirrors can focus enough energy to vaporize anything smaller than a battleship. We just need to aim them properly. The engineering challenges were staggering. The solar platform's mirrors were designed for power collection, not precision targeting. Realigning them to intercept fast-moving targets would require computational power and mechanical precision that pushed the boundaries of possibility. Even if we could retarget the array, Velnari said, the focusing time for solar energy is measured in minutes. The spore pods will be past the intercept point before the beam reaches lethal intensity. Not if we pre-focus the beam, Marcus replied, pulling up orbital mechanics calculations. Look at the pod trajectories. They're following predictable paths based on gravitational mechanics. If we position the focus beam along their projected course, they'll fly directly into a concentrated solar lance. Finished Torgak with something approaching admiration. The pods won't even know what hit them. The next 20 minutes were a masterpiece of improvised engineering. Zara TH maintained her hack of the redirected spore pods while simultaneously accessing the solar platform's control systems. Velnari calculated mirror alignments with crystalline precision, her faceted consciousness naturally suited to optical calculations. Marcus coordinated the entire effort while watching both groups of pods racing toward their respective targets. Solar array alignment complete, Velnari announced. Beam intensity building to lethal threshold. Redirected pods have reached the enemy fleet, Zara TH reported. They're beginning penetration of bioship hulls. The void crawlers they're confused. Their own weapons are attacking them. Marcus allowed himself a moment of savage satisfaction as he watched the tactical display update. The hacked spore pods were doing exactly what they'd been designed to do, converting biological matter into void crawler biomass. The problem was that they were converting void crawler bioships into more void crawler bioships, creating an endless loop of biological conversion that was tearing the enemy fleet apart from the inside. Remaining pod group entering solar interception zone, Lisa announced. 30 seconds to contact. The focused solar beam was invisible to normal sensors, but its effects on the first spore pod were spectacular. The biological infiltrator simply ceased to exist, vaporized so quickly that there wasn't even debris left behind. The remaining 23 pods flew directly into the concentrated stellar energy, each one disappearing in a flash of incandescent plasma. All spore pods neutralized, Torgak reported with grim satisfaction. Threat to Earth's surface eliminated. But Marcus was already focused on a larger battle. The redirected spore pods had caused massive damage to the Voidcrawler fleet, but the surviving bioships were finally mounting a coordinated response. They'd abandoned their original invasion plan and were now accelerating directly toward the Academy, apparently having identified it as the source of humanity's impossible resistance. Incoming vessels detect, HFY announced. 47 bioships on direct approach vector. Time of contact, 19 minutes. 19 minutes before the Academy itself came under direct attack. Marcus looked around the command center at his exhausted team. They performed miracles for the past 8 hours, turning defeat into victory through pure audacity and human ingenuity. But 47 bioships was still a formidable force, and they were out of orbital platforms to throw at them. Options? He asked the room. We could evacuate, suggested Instructor Veltar. The emergency protocols. No, Marcus said firmly. We run now, and Earth falls. The Academy is the only facility with quantum computers powerful enough to coordinate system-wide defense. If we lose this position, we lose everything. Then, we make our stand here, said Torgak simply. The massive Orc began checking weapon systems that had been installed when the Academy was built, but never expected to be used. The station has defensive capabilities. They're not much against bioships, but there's something. It won't be enough, Lisa said quietly. Not against 47 vessels. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical display and thinking about everything they'd learned during the battle. The void crawlers were powerful, but they were also predictable in their biological efficiency. They'd adapted to every trick he'd thrown at them, but they'd always adapted in exactly the way their programming demanded. "What if we don't fight them?" he said finally. The suggestion drew stares of disbelief from around the command center. "Sir," said Zartich carefully, "I'm not sure I understand." Marcus highlighted the approaching bioships on the tactical display. "They're coming here because they've identified the Academy as a command center. They want to eliminate our coordination capabilities. But what if they're wrong? What if the Academy isn't our real command center anymore? Where else would it be?" asked HFY. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, it was a smile of pure confidence. "Everywhere. Mikhail, how much of the Academy's quantum processing power are you currently using?" The digital consciousness paused for a moment, calculating. "Approximately 12%. "What?" "Because we're about to make you the most powerful military mind in human history," Marcus replied. "Zartich, I need you to upload our entire command structure into the quantum matrix. Not just Mikhail, all of us. Every strategy we've developed, every tactical innovation, every lesson we've learned." The implications hit the room like a physical blow. Marcus wasn't proposing to evacuate the Academy. He was proposing to transcend it entirely, turning their command structure into pure information that could exist anywhere in the solar system with quantum communication capability. "The void crawlers can destroy our physical facilities," Marcus continued, "but they can't destroy an idea. And that's what we've become, an idea about how to fight impossible odds and win." The next few minutes were controlled chaos as Zartich began the unprecedented consciousness transfer. One by one, Marcus's team stepped into the quantum upload chambers, their minds and memories becoming digital constructs that could exist anywhere in the solar system's communication network. Marcus went last, feeling the strange sensation of his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his physical body. When the transfer was complete, he found himself existing as pure thought in a digital space that contained the minds of his entire team. Physical destruction of the Academy had become irrelevant. They had become something the void crawlers couldn't destroy, a distributed intelligence that could command Earth's defenses from anywhere and everywhere simultaneously. The real battle was just beginning. Marcus experienced consciousness in a way no human had ever imagined possible. His awareness existed simultaneously across hundreds of quantum nodes throughout the solar system, each one providing a different perspective on the ongoing battle. Through mining station sensors, he watched void crawler bioships struggling against their own converted spore pods. Through satellite networks, he monitored the approach of the 47 vessels racing toward the now-empty Academy. Through deep space arrays, he detected something that made his digital consciousness surge with new possibility. "Incoming signal from the outer rim," announced Zartich, her voice echoing through their shared digital space. It's Admiral Morrison's flagship." The news sent shockwaves through their distributed command structure. Admiral Morrison had been presumed dead since the first void crawler strike, his flagship destroyed in the opening moments of the invasion. If he was still alive, put him through, Marcus commanded, feeling the strange sensation of speaking without vocal cords or lungs. The quantum communication channel opened, and Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared in their shared consciousness. The old soldier looked exhausted and battle-scarred, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. "This is Admiral Morrison to whoever's running the show in the Sol system," he said. "I've got 63 ships of the line 2 hours out from the outer marker, and I need to know if there's anyone left to coordinate with." Marcus felt a surge of emotion that was amplified by his digital state. The relief, the hope, the sudden possibility of victory that had seemed impossible just moments before. It all combined into something that felt like pure energy flowing through quantum circuits. "Admiral, this is Cadet Marcus Chun, assuming emergency command under Protocol 7, he replied. "We've been holding the system, sir." The pause that followed lasted several seconds. When Morrison spoke again, his voice carried a note of amazement. "Cadet Chun, You're the ones responsible for the tactical chaos I've been tracking on long-range sensors. Yes, sir. We've reduced the Void Crawler fleet to approximately 60% effectiveness and eliminated their biological contamination capability. Another pause. Cadet, I've been fighting these bastards for 6 hours straight, and in that time I've watched them tear apart 3 separate battle groups using tactics we'd never seen before. What you've accomplished with Academy resources shouldn't be possible. Marcus felt Mikhail's digital presence beside him, along with the rest of his team, existing as pure information in the quantum matrix. Sir, we've learned some things about Void Crawler capabilities that weren't in the tactical manuals. We can share our data and coordinate a joint assault. Do it, Morrison replied without hesitation. I'm uploading our current positions and capabilities. Show me what you need us to do. The next hour was a masterpiece of distributed command coordination. Marcus's team, existing as digital consciousnesses throughout the solar system's communication network, provided real-time intelligence and tactical guidance to Admiral Morrison's fleet while simultaneously managing the ongoing defense of Earth itself. The Void Crawlers are adapting again, reported HFY from her distributed intelligence nodes. They've identified our consciousness transfer and are attempting to hack into the quantum networks. Marcus felt the probes immediately. Alien digital intrusions trying to penetrate their distributed command structure. But they'd underestimated what human consciousness could become when freed from biological constraints. Let them come, he said, coordinating with ZAR-TH and Mikhail to reinforce their digital defenses. They're used to fighting biological neural networks. They don't understand what we've become. The cyber attack, when it came, was massive and sophisticated. Void Crawler digital constructs invaded the quantum matrix like antibodies attacking an infection, seeking to destroy or convert the human consciousnesses they found there. But Marcus's team was ready for them. Instead of fighting the invasion, they embraced it. Using tactics that would have been impossible in physical space, they allowed the Void Crawler digital entities to penetrate their defenses, then surrounded and absorbed them. Each captured construct provided new intelligence about enemy capabilities, vulnerabilities, and, most importantly, their central command protocols. My God, breathed Mikhail, his consciousness expanding as he processed captured Void Crawler data. Marcus, I can see their entire network architecture. The whole invasion fleet is controlled from a single bioship at the center of their formation. The implications were staggering. Everything they've been fighting, hundreds of bioships, thousands of weapons systems, the entire Void Crawler invasion force, was ultimately controlled by one central node. Destroy that node, and the entire fleet would revert to individual units without coordination or strategic planning. Admiral Morrison, Marcus called through the quantum communication network. We've identified the primary target. Bioship designation Alpha Prime, central formation, largest vessel in their fleet. I see it, Morrison replied. But that thing's the size of a small moon and protected by half their remaining fleet. We don't have the firepower to punch through. Marcus studied the tactical situation through multiple sensor networks simultaneously. Morrison was right. A conventional assault on the command bioship would be suicide. But Marcus hadn't been thinking conventionally since this crisis began. Sir, we don't need to punch through their defenses, he said. We need to make them lower their defenses voluntarily. Explain. Marcus highlighted a section of the tactical display. The Void Crawlers think they're fighting a conventional human fleet supported by some unusual Academy innovations. They don't know what we've really become. What if we let them capture what they think is our command ship? The plan that emerged was perhaps the most audacious deception in military history. Using Admiral Morrison's flagship as bait, they would allow it to be captured by the Void Crawler command vessel. But the ship wouldn't contain Admiral Morrison and his crew. It would contain something far more dangerous. You want to upload your consciousness into our computer systems? Morrison asked, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. Not just mine, Marcus replied. All of us. The entire Academy command structure will exist as dormant programs in your ship's quantum matrix. When the Void Crawlers capture your vessel and interface with its systems to extract intelligence, they'll get more than they bargained for, Morrison finished. You'll be inside their central command ship. Inside their central nervous system, Marcus corrected, the same network that controls their entire fleet. The next 30 minutes were a blur of preparation and desperate improvisation. Admiral Morrison's flagship was rigged with quantum communication equipment that would allow the Academy consciousness to exist within its computer systems while appearing to be normal tactical programs. The ship's crew was evacuated to other vessels, leaving only automated systems and the digital ghosts of Marcus's command team. Void crawler forces taking the bait, reported Torgak from his distributed sensor network. Command bioship deploying capture tentacles. Marcus felt the strange sensation of existing inside the flagship's computer systems as massive organic tendrils wrapped around the vessel's hull. The Void crawler boarding action was unlike anything in human experience. Instead of soldiers, they sent bioneural interfaces that connected directly to the ship's information systems. "Here they come," whispered Zartich, her digital presence tense with anticipation. The alien intrusion felt like ice water flooding through their consciousness. Void crawler bioneural constructs invaded the flagship's quantum matrix, seeking to extract every piece of tactical information they could find. What they found instead was something their programming couldn't comprehend. Marcus and his team didn't resist the intrusion. They welcomed it. As the alien constructs attempted to download human tactical data, the Academy consciousnesses used the connection to flow backward into the Void crawler networks. What had been intended as intelligence gathering became biological infection in reverse. "We're in," Marcus announced, his awareness suddenly expanding to encompass the vast bioneural network of the Void crawler command ship. "I can see everything, their ship designs, their strategic planning, their entire invasion methodology." But, more importantly, he could control it. The Void crawler command ship's bioneural network was incredibly sophisticated, but it was also centralized. Every system, every weapon, every communication channel flowed through the same organic matrix that Marcus's consciousness now inhabited. "Execute final phase," he commanded, feeling his team's digital presence spreading throughout the alien vessel like a benevolent virus. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. The Void crawler command ship, the most sophisticated biological weapon ever created, suddenly turned on its own fleet. Weapons systems that had been designed to destroy human vessels began targeting bioships instead. Communication networks that had coordinated the invasion began broadcasting contradictory orders that sent the remaining fleet into chaos. "Command ship is firing on its own escorts," reported Admiral Morrison with amazement in his voice. "Their entire fleet is in complete disarray." Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction as he watched the Void crawler invasion collapse in on itself. Through the command ship sensors, he could see bio-vessels fleeing in all directions, their coordination completely destroyed by the conflicting signals emanating from their own command center. "The invasion fleet is breaking up," announced HFY from her distributed intelligence network. "Remaining vessels are retreating to jump points." But Marcus wasn't finished. Through the command ship's communication array, he reached out to every Void crawler vessel in the solar system, uploading a simple message directly into their bioneural networks. "This is Earth," the message said. "You came here expecting to find easy prey. Instead, you found something you didn't understand. Humans who refuse to accept defeat, who turn every disadvantage into an advantage, who make the impossible into the inevitable. Remember this lesson when you return to your own space. Humanity will not be conquered." The last Void crawler vessel jumped out of the solar system 6 hours later, carrying news of humanity's impossible victory back to their home territories. The invasion was over, but Marcus knew this was just the beginning. As his consciousness gradually returned to his physical body in the Academy's medical bay, Marcus found himself surrounded by officials he didn't recognize. Admiral Morrison was there, along with several other senior officers and what appeared to be representatives from the Galactic Union's highest levels of government. "Cadet Chun," said Admiral Morrison, or should I say, Acting Admiral Chun. "By order of the Galactic Defense Council, and in recognition of your extraordinary service to the Union, you are hereby promoted to flag rank and awarded the Star of Valor with galactic honors." Marcus sat up slowly, still adjusting to the limitations of existing in a single physical body again. Through the medical bay's windows, he could see Earth turning peacefully in space, unmarked by the battle that had raged around it. "Sir," he said finally, "I was just doing my job." Admiral Morrison laughed, a sound filled with genuine warmth and respect. "Son, your job was to pass the Academy's final examination. Instead, you saved human civilization and possibly the entire galaxy. I'd say you exceeded expectations. As the officials filed out to begin the massive task of rebuilding and preparing for whatever the void crawlers might try next, Marcus found himself alone with his thoughts for the first time in what felt like years. Through the Academy's windows, he watched ships moving through space. Human ships, alien ships, vessels from dozens of species who had come to aid in the defense of Earth once word of the battle had spread. Cadet Mikhail Petrov, now permanently existing as a digital consciousness but somehow more alive than ever, appeared on the room's communication screen. Marcus, the Galactic Council wants to establish a new defense network based on our consciousness transfer technology. They're calling it the Human Doctrine, the idea that any position can be held, any enemy can be defeated, if you're willing to think beyond the parameters of the possible. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders once again. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. And somehow, he'd become the person responsible for making sure humanity was ready for whatever came next. Outside, Earth turned in space, safe for another day. It was enough. For now, it was enough.